Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. In this video, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion about being responsible. Now, I have made a video about this before, and again, this video is going to be completely unscripted, which is, it's actually quite rare for me to do videos like this, but I will explain why I'm doing it in just a moment. But I have already made a video similar to this before. It's called Being a Responsible Player, and it discusses why, as a player in pretty decent gear, you should consider helping out people in lower gear who are struggling and all that kind of stuff. This was made in Mr. Pandaria, back when Looking for Raid was a little bit different to how it is now. Looking for Raid had a little bit more challenge, I'd argue, and it actually really got a lot of controversy, as much as my videos can make controversy. I got a lot of comments saying, you know, how my points were flawed, and back then I think probably a lot of them were flawed, but today I want to talk about something similar, but not quite the same as, you know, go help out people in LFR, because it's a completely different kind of atmosphere now, and it's much easier than ever to really get into raiding. So what sparked this video is an email I got from someone who will remain anonymous for the sake of anonymity, who offered me some kind words about being contacted by Blizzard, which was great. And he also wrote that he had a concern about World of Warcraft, and I'm going to read it out to you now. And I'd like to know, in the comments and stuff like that, if you feel similarly, okay? I recently started playing WoW, and to tell you the truth, it's been hard to make friends. I play on the EU servers, and I'm battling to form any connections with people there. Everyone is always so busy, and not willing, or nor do they have the time, to help. I ask class questions in guild chat, and they do answer, but it's like I'm invisible. I do genuinely think that the people playing WoW are awesome people, and I've never considered myself socially awkward in any way before. While this is disheartening, I think I know what the problem is. WoW is an old game, and the people that play it have been playing it for years. They have made their friendships, and they have their circle of friends. They are content with what the game offers them. Noobs like me are a burden. When I first purchased the game, I was beside myself with all the wonderful things I've heard about the WoW community. I imagined a whole legion of badass gangsters rushing in on a boss. I'm not quite sure what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this. I was desperately looking for someone to take me under their wing and show me the ropes. Show me how to PvP, how to set up keybinds for that. Show me raids and how they work. Invite me to accompany them on legacy raids, etc. But it seems that all raiders especially, are chasing gear or achievements, and they only want to be associated with the best, and only want to be doing things that benefit their characters in some way. All this to the detriment of newer players desperate for guidance, and also maybe just a friendly face. I can foresee this being a problem for WoW in general. It's like one big club and noobs are not invited. I feel like a social leper. This, of course, is not Blizzard's fault, at least not entirely, although I think garrisons have had a part to play in the death of player-to-player interaction in this expansion. In order to garner new players, Blizzard needs to consider the little guy. It's all well and good to bemoan this patch's lack of content, but just imagine someone like me who has hardly experienced anything at all. Progression raiding? Forget it. Progress depends on social connections. No social connections means no progress. I'm sure that I'm not the only new player to experience this. For example, I returned to WoW last week after a 2-month break and discovered I had been kicked from my guild. On Sunday evening, I did the very first raid of my life on my item level 640 Retribution Paladin. It was a pug on Highmall Normal. After the first boss, the tank took his loot and buggered off. After the second boss fell, half the raid left. When we finally got to Brackenspore, we wiped 3 times and the raid just kind of fizzled out. I know this is normal for pugs, but it's not very nice for a first-timer. They say lone wolves don't make it in WoW. Now, this email really touched me, so to speak, because it reminded me of when I first started playing WoW. It's a very similar feeling. It wasn't exactly the same, because when I first started playing WoW, I got into WoW for role-playing purposes. I know, what a nerd. But yeah, I got into WoW for role-playing purposes, and raiding only kind of came up afterwards. But I absolutely understand how it feels to feel like there's all these raiders and all these, as you said, this big club, and you're not invited because you don't have the experience, you don't have the gear, you just aren't, you don't feel like you're on the same level as these other people. So I'm going to start this little discussion by addressing directly the person who wrote me this email and to anyone else who feels similarly to what I just read out. So, there is definitely a wall from when you first get into WoW and you feel like you're just wandering around, experiencing the content, exploring, all that stuff, and then there's a wall, and then after that, it feels like on the other side of that wall is all the kind of raiding and stuff like that, and, you know, the hardcore stuff where, you know, people are desperately smashing their faces against walls to progress, and they're getting all this gear and stuff like that. And getting past that wall can feel somewhat impossible. And in a lot of ways, it is very, very difficult to do. And it is a real shame that, because I will go ahead and say it. The person who sent me this email, you're not wrong. You're really not. There is a wall there, and getting past it is remarkably difficult. And it can be very disheartening to, enter a pug like this and just kind of see it all fall apart, and then that's just kind of it, That's like, oh, this is raiding? Eh. Let me start by saying that is not what raiding is about. I've never believed that pugging a raid works, essentially, when you want to get the raiding experience. I've never found that it's worked, because raiding is not about gear. Raiding is not about seeing the content. Raiding is not about DPS, or healing, or tanking. It's not about the meters, it's not about any of that stuff. It's about the teamwork. At least for me, it's about the sense of achievement that you get when you kill a boss that you've been progressing on as a team for all this time. And it can really elate you, I think, when you finally get that boss down. I mean, I recently just got my first ever mythic boss down, Beast Lord Darmak, and when we got him, it was really close, and we all yelled, and we were all really happy. And for just that moment, it was like, nothing else matters, we're just really damn happy. And you can't get that in a pug. So, my advice to you is, pugging is easy, really. I mean, it is. When you want to get into a pug, it's not generally going to be that hard to get into one, because there's so many of them, and that you've now got this this group finder tool that I've never really used in the slightest, and you've got all that going on. But I don't think that you can get into raiding that way. You have to be exceedingly lucky to get into raiding that way. You really do. You need to find a situation where there is a guild run and they are looking for, say, 1, maybe 2 or 3 people. You join that guild run, you click really well with the raiders and you do okay, and they see your potential and they say, hey, do you want to join us? And then you're in. You get past the wall. But that is very rare. You have to be very lucky. You really do, for that to be the situation. Really, I think to get into a guild and do the raiding, as I talked about, which is really where a lot of the satisfaction comes from for me, because, I mean, my shaman is decked out in 685, 690 gear. I've got a couple of mythic pieces. I've got a mythic warforged piece. All that, I don't give a crap about it. It's just gear. It's just numbers. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even look very good. I transmog it. So, I mean, there's all that, and I don't really feel anything from it. And I mean, when you first get your pieces of gear, it's really exciting and all that stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, this is really cool. And as you see your character progress, it feels great. But one character's progression isn't going to make a raid team. Everyone needs to progress together. And that process, gearing up together and slowly getting to the point where you can pound these bosses into the dirt and fight against their harder difficulty versions and win, that's really where raiding is, in my opinion. That's what makes it great. So if you want to get into that, like I said, you can either try and get really lucky with a pug and look for like a guild run that needs a couple of people, and then, and just try out, basically use it as a means with which to trial with them, and if they like you and you like them, maybe you can join them and then you're in. But really, there is another process, and it's probably what most people are going to have to go through, just if you don't get lucky, which, is going to be the case most of the time. What you're going to want to do is you are going to want to try and join a raiding guild. Now, this is very difficult. When you join a raiding guild, you have no idea what it's going to be like. It's a bit easier now because you can cross round with people most of the time, unless you're doing Mythic, but, if you're in this situation, you're not going to be doing Mythic. You're going to be going into Normals and maybe Heroic, and you can use the cross-realm system to get into it and, basically trial with them without having to join their guild or, transfer servers or stuff like that. Now, before you do this process and you try and get into a raiding guild, you have to ask yourself, is the guild I'm in right now suitable for my needs, for my wants of the game, right? Because if any of you have watched my WoW Live of my raids, you'll notice that there was a gap, and that at one point, I was raiding with one guild, the Legion of the Seraphim, and then the next video that came out, I was raiding with a different guild called Artifice. Now, I'm currently still in Artifice, because they're a full-time raiding guild, whereas Legion of the Seraphim was a social guild that also ran raids. And they had a pretty good raid team, I have to say, but it just got to the point where their wants of progression were not the same as mine. So I decided to leave, and I went onto actually the WoW forums, found a guild that seemed suitable, made an application, and then spent time with them. I tried with them, I joined their guild and all that stuff, and the process just worked. So, that's the kind of process you're going to want to go through. Now, when it comes to applying for guilds, you're going to need experience. Most of the time, you're going to either need talent or experience. This is really the same with anything in life. A guild, when they're looking for raiders, what they are after is potential, right? Start by getting this out of your head, okay? No decent guild will want you as a low-geared player to absolutely annihilate their DPS meters, you know? They don't want that. Because there are no real raiders out there who are looking for guilds, who are, decked out in really great gear, and are also, looking for a guild. That's very rare. And those people get gobbled up by guilds really fast. What they're looking for is potential, right? You can be next to bottom on the DPS meters, right? And they won't care. Because if they are a decent raiding guild, they will look at your gear and they'll say, you are undergeared for this place. That is entirely understandable. We do not expect you to do really super high on the DPS, because that is the situation I was in when I joined Artifice. I was not top DPSer. I was fairly competitive because I knew my class really well. I mean, I make guides for it, so I do know the class really well. And I was able to be somewhat competitive despite my low gear. But even then, it wasn't the fact that I could be semi-competitive on the meters even though I had low gear that got this guild interested in me. They became interested in me because I showed knowledge of the game, I showed a good, healthy attitude towards raiding, I was social, I knew when to laugh, when to joke, when to focus, I would offer suggestions for improvement, I would not make stupid mistakes, and, most importantly, I would volunteer for things, right? If they said, okay, we need someone to do this, I would say, okay, I can do that, I can, stun this group of ads. I can kite this. I can offer this extra bit of healing. I can go to a different spec. I can go into my off spec and heal this fight for you, I made myself invaluable to the raid team regardless of what my gear was like. That is the kind of thing that guilds are looking for, right? You can be in the worst gear in the world, but if you survive the fight, if you avoid your mechanics that you have to avoid, if you do the fight properly, if you show a good knowledge of your class, if you're friendly and social, and you volunteer to do things, the guild, if it's got any sense, will say, okay, this person might not be doing the most DPS, but they clearly know what they're doing. What will happen if, they're volunteering for everything, they're really nice, they're social, they're friendly, they know what they're doing, they know the fights, they're helping us improve with different suggestions for tactics, and they're also doing all these extra things, volunteering for mechanics and things like that. What would happen if we then decked that person out in fantastic gear? It's so obvious. The raid team will be much, much, much stronger. Isn't that great? That's what people are looking for. That's what these groups, these guilds are looking for. They're looking for potential. So you have to build for yourself a knowledge of this game. And I will do everything I can to make my guides cover everything you need to know about that experience, to get you started in that process. But really, the only real way you can get the experience is to go into these raids. And unfortunately, you can't do them with a guild, so yes, you're going to have to pug them. But there are lots of different things you can do to make yourself a stronger player. First of all, keybind everything, and I mean just about everything. I have almost all of my spells keybound. If you can play fast and react fast and just be on a whole other level than most other players, that is a great start. So I would suggest start by learning your keybindings and getting used to your class. Look up a guide for your class. I know I don't have all of them yet, but I will work on it. I will probably start working on all of the class guides at the same time for the next expansion so that I can get them all out really early, but I may do others. Beforehand, we'll have to see. So yeah, there's that. Learn your class. So if you can't find a guide on my channel, look for another guide on YouTube or go to icyveins.com. I would definitely suggest you go to that site anyway, just to read about your class. Spend time on forums talking about your class with other people. The MMO Champion forums and the WoW forums both have sub-forums dedicated to their classes, and people will more than likely answer your questions on there. So become part of your class's community in that regard. Next up, make sure you have a user interface you're comfortable with. You're going to need a few basic add-ons in order to become a successful raider. First of all, you'll need a boss mod, so either DBM or bigwigs. Second of all, you're going to need information easily available to you. I suggest weak auras for this, and I have a weak auras guide that I should probably update. But yes, make sure you have information presented to you in a clean and easy-to-see kind of way. If you've got buffs you need to track, don't have them in the top right corner with your other buffs. Have them in the center of your screen. Make a weak aura that tells you when you have a certain buff, when you reach a certain amount of rage or energy or combo points, whatever. Make that information easily presentable to you, and make your class easy to play by getting used to it. Make everything muscle memory. And the only way you can make your class muscle memory is to just play and play and play. Find excuses to do things. Run 5-mans just for the hell of it. Just to learn, right? Run these raid pugs. they're not exactly a healthy way of learning fights, but it's the only way you've got right now. So build that experience. Try to get yourself into these pugs and try to get yourself a couple of achievements that show, okay, I've at least cleared Heimel on normal, even if it's with a pug. That shouldn't be too impossible to do, but, pugs are pugs. So, I mean, don't go crazy about it. Achievements aren't everything. It's just what you can show you can do, right? So, once you've got yourself keybound, you've got a few add-ons that help, you've learnt about your class, you're at a pretty decent position. So practice. Practice, 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 practice. I'm going to say that over and over again. You keep going, you keep learning, you spend your time talking to other people who know your class on the forums. If you know anyone that also plays your class, talk to them about it, Because there are all these little nuances to playing a class. All these little moments where it's like, okay, at this moment I have to consider this, this, and this. What spell should I use here? Talk to other people because they likely would have considered this stuff, If you can find someone who knows more about this game than you, and you can talk to them, and they talk back, that's great. And I will be talking to the people who are skilled in just a moment. So, if you do that, fantastic, right? So, learn more about your class, spend time in your class's community. Like I said, forums. It's a great way to learn about this kind of stuff. Right, so you've done all that, you've practiced, you've got a bit of experience, and you're thinking about joining a guild now, a raiding guild. So, first of all, you want to find one. I would suggest the WoW forums for this, I really would. The WoW forums can be a terrible place when it comes to the general forums, but when it comes to recruitment threads, there are a lot of guilds out there, and all of them are looking for people, because right now, raiding is difficult, because there are a lot of guilds out there who are struggling with attendance. Hell, Artifice is struggling with attendance, and before anyone says anything, I'm not an officer, I can't recruit you into the guild. Please don't ask, so I'm sorry. Anyway, so a lot of guilds will be struggling with attendance, and they will want people who are decent at their class to find that potential, to do farm runs with them, to get them geared up. Okay? So, first of all, find yourself a guild that you want to join. Don't set your goals too high. If you're in, say, like item level 640 gear, and you're pugging Heimel normal, look for a guild that's running normal, right? If they're running normal Blackrock Foundry, that's a good place to start, If they're running heroic, as an item level 640 player, you might not really be in the best position to apply for that guild, but you might be able to get in if you can show real cutting-edge knowledge of the game and your class. But generally, just, look for a guild that is slightly above what you're doing right now. So if you're pugging Heimel normal, look for a guild that is just running Blackrock Foundry normal, that's progressing on Blackrock Foundry normal. And then you can progress with them, right? Because likely, they'll be doing other things to gear up. Maybe they'll run LFRs together. Maybe they'll be doing Heimel normal or heroic in order to gear up for Blackrock Foundry. So that kind of stuff is what they'll be doing. And then you'll start building your experience with them, and if you find that they're stuck on something they shouldn't be stuck on, you've got a lot of players that are kind of dragging you down, you can move on. That's just what you're going to have to do. It's not exactly the nicest thing to do, especially if you make friends, but if you want to really get into raiding like this and you want to find that moment where, you're progressing on the cutting edge stuff, that's how you're going to have to do it, especially when you first start off and you're still building your experience base. Okay, so what you have to do now is you have to apply to that guild, and applying to this guild is going to be difficult because you're undergeared. You're likely not as experienced as they would prefer, but you have to show that that doesn't matter, that your weaknesses can be overcome, right? Most guilds will have an application process. They'll have you write an application of some sort, and they'll ask questions such as, what's your experience? What guilds have you been in the past? What's your experience with the game? How old are you? Do you have a microphone? What's your connection like? Stuff like that. Just basic questions that will give them an idea of who you are. So, what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to start by being honest. The worst thing you can do is lie. So don't. If they're a decent guild and they realize, this person is not that well geared and he doesn't have much experience, but he sounds like he knows what he's doing, they will likely take you because they will see that potential in you. Right. The first thing you're going to want to do is you are going to want to tell them your weaknesses. If you haven't been playing this game long, you say, I started playing this game in Warlords of Draenor. I've been playing for 6 months. Let's just say you've been playing for 6 months. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. You say, I've been playing for 6 months. This is my experience. I've done some 5-mans, I've done pugs, I've done LFR, I've done the 5-mans, but I want more, right? You want to start by showing that you want to learn. You'll say, I understand that raiding is a difficult process and that it requires experience and talent. However, I believe that I have enough experience to get into raiding and to become a valuable part of your raid team. and then talk about your experience, even if it's a minor kind of experience, if it's just 5-mans, you know? One example I can give you is when Warlords of Draenor first came out, I was doing Orc and Don on Heroic. We were at the same gear level. We were like, I'm level 630, and we were doing these 5-man Heroics. And we were fighting Azakel, the third boss of Orc and Dune. Make sure you get that right. And at one point, the healer got disoriented, and the tank was about to die. And I, as an elemental shaman, understood my class and knew I had the potential to save this attempt on the boss. So I dropped what I was doing, I did no more DPS, and I just spam healed the tank for a couple of seconds. You know, I just used healing surge, healing surge, healing surge, and his health didn't go up, but it didn't go down. He just stayed on about 15% health, and I was able to keep him alive until the healer was able to break free of his disorient and pick up the tank and save him, right? You say things like that. You talk about, in detail, these moments where you excel, and when you show them that you can do this and you understand how to do these moments, they will say, damn, this person doesn't have much experience, but they do seem to know what they're doing. You know, if you can show that, you do everything you can to show that, the chances of them accepting you are much higher. And of course, remember to use proper grammar and capital letters and full stops and all that stuff. Make sure you type properly when you apply for this kind of stuff. Nothing makes someone seem more stupid than when they don't type properly, okay? Even if they're the smartest person in the world, if they type badly, people are gonna think they're dumb, and you don't want that. Now, I've basically talked about everything I want to talk about in this period of time, but I want to now go on and talk to some of the more experienced players who may be watching this video, although at this point, you know, they might not be, but, you know, at the very least, I need to get it out there. So, as an experienced player, you need to remember where you came from, alright? Because at one point, every single player of this game was a noob. No one came into this game and was great. No one. Everyone starts somewhere, and as an experienced player, I feel it is your responsibility, and my responsibility as an experienced player, to help those who want to be helped, you know? There are people out there who are new to the game, who want to learn, and that's where a lot of them find my guides, right? But if you're an experienced player and you don't help these people, you are just doing it all wrong, I think. These people have the potential to be as good, if not better, than you. And the thing that really hurt me about this email that I got was the line, "It seems that all raiders are chasing gear or achievements and they only want to be associated with the best, and only want to be doing things that benefit their characters in some way." And this is a terrible mindset to have as a raider. You are a raider, you're a team player. You cannot kill those bosses without your team. You cannot progress without your raid group. You want that raid group to be stronger, you are going to need new blood. People are not going to be raiding forever. People are going to leave, they're going to go on breaks. You're going to need to replace them, right? You are going to want skilled players to come in and help you beat bosses. It is that simple. And if bribing you like that doesn't work, let me appeal to you as a human being. They're also human beings. They want to get the most out of this game. They have to go through the same processes you had to go through when you were a new player. Make it easier for them. See their potential. Do everything you can to help them. Because that's your damned responsibility as a player and as a human being. Mutual generosity is great because, like I said, you help these people gear up, you show them the ropes, you show them how to do everything, they'll turn around and they will thank you. They'll say thank you for doing this, and they will pay you back. Because let me tell you something, I make guides of all kinds. I make class guides, I make raiding guides, I don't make PvP guides. Maybe I will in the future, but I make all kinds of these different guides, and I get comments every day telling me, thank you for making this guide. Thank you for showing me the ropes. Thank you for demonstrating how I can be a better player. And that doesn't have to extend to me. I mean, what the hell am I? I'm just some random 21-year-old who just makes videos about World of Warcraft. The only skills I have are a lot of time, a few pieces of editing software, a half-decent computer that can record on 60 frames per second, and a $100 microphone. There are, of course, other things, but, you know, I can talk and things like that. I'm able to present it, but you don't need to present it in a fancy way if you're just dealing with a one-on-one situation. You just have to get the information across. You just have to send them the links. You just have to spend time with them, right? That's all you have to do. And you'll get that same admiration in a kind of way. And that might sound very selfish, but it's nice to be nice, and you will benefit from it. You absolutely will benefit from it if you help these people. So next time you see someone in your guild chat who's like, asks a really simple question like, what's the auction house for? Or, you know, where do I level at this point? You know, a question that makes you roll your eyes and go, ugh, what a noob. Pause and think. That is a human being on the other side of that monitor, on the other side of that guild chat. A human being who has all the same potential that you do, that might one day be raiding as you raid, might be raiding better than you. So let me ask you a question. How is it good for anyone if their progress is slowed down? How does it help you if the potential raiders you can spend time with have to take longer to get to the skill level where you can take them on raids? Think about that. Because it's not good to stop them from progressing. WoW is all about progression from start to finish. As you learn about all the basic stuff, all the way up to learning how to effectively avoid Beast Lord, Darmex, fault lines, Cannon Barrage, and when to use different cooldowns, or when you should AoE down the ads as opposed to focusing the boss, how you can Bloodlust just at this one point to get double damage on the boss and make the fight much, much easier. All that stuff. It's all progression. It's all learning. Gotta start somewhere. So think about that next time you see a noob ask a question. And be the nice person, and answer them. Because guess what? New players tend to be nicer than experienced players, because of things like this. So if you're that friendly guy, chances are they'll be friendly back. And anyone who disagrees, anyone who thinks that, you know, these noobs need to remain noobs forever, I'm gonna say this right now. I don't want you on my channel. I'm just gonna say that, because I believe that every single person who plays this game has the potential to be great at it. That's why I make guides about it, right? Everyone has that potential. Some people might squander that potential by not wanting to learn, by refusing to open their mind and be, for instance, a nice person. A lot of people do that. A lot of people squander that potential. But it is that unerring dislike of progression, that wanting to not help people learn, that drives me crazy. Why do you not want these people to learn? Because one day, believe it or not, they're going to replace you. Make their journey easier. Just because it wasn't easy for you, don't make it hard for them. Okay? That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, although that was a little bit depressing at the end there. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it helpful. To the person who sent me this email, I absolutely have read it, and I read all my emails. I read all of the comments, well, just about all of them. I get more and more of them each day, but I read all of them. You know, I will at the very least skim read over them, and if it's long, I'll take the time to read it whenever I can. I read my Facebook messages, I read it when people tweet to me, I read emails. I will read and I'll do whatever I can to help. So, thank you very much for watching. And if you do want to contact me, you can find links in the description, or like I said, you can just leave a comment. I'll do whatever I can to help. And hopefully, we can get a few other people to join the process as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in the world of Warcraft.